Preface. Ethereal Hollywood is a world reconfigured from the golden age of Hollywood, where the legendary stars are not just memories, but immortal archetypes, still living in their own parallel alternative reality. Familiar history is not duplicated but flexible and constantly revisioning itself along diverse pathways. Time and space are also more fluid and less binding. And what has been called magic works in odd and unusual ways, producing scenarios from the silly to the surreal. And since these stories are in an alternative world or dimension, there are variances from real-world facts, such as the relationship between characters, studios, events. This is a fluid world where history flows in unexpected directions. These are audiobooks with imagery synced to the narrative as much as possible, serving as quasi-storyboards to give a rough visual dimension to the stories. Through the Color Spectrum of Fox. Book 14 of the Ethereal Hollywood series. By Arnold Kalnitsky. The year was 1943. While the world outside burned with grim realities, the darkened halls of movie theaters offered a vibrant escape, particularly when it came to the dazzling Technicolor spectacles from 20th Century Fox. Their musicals, their comedies, their romances, all burst forth in a riot of hues so rich, so saturated, they promised a taste of paradise. But lately, paradise was getting a little crowded. It began subtly, with whispers among projectionists. Did you see the sheen on Carmen Miranda's fruit hat tonight? Almost blinding. Or, the blue in Alice Faye's dress in Weekend in Havana, it practically vibrated. The colors, painstakingly crafted by Fox's legendary Technicolor department, weren't just vivid, they were alive. Then came the first verifiable incident. During a matinee showing of Down Argentine Way, as Don Ameche, playing the suave Ricardo Quintana, crooned a soulful melody to an enraptured Betty Grable as Glenda Gale, something extraordinary happened. A young woman in the front row, mesmerized by the emerald green of the Argentinian pampas and the fiery red of Grable's lips, leaned forward, a gasp escaping her. The screen shimmered, pulsed with an almost liquid light, and then, with a soft pop, she was gone. One moment, she was in a plush theater seat. The next, she was standing amidst a meticulously painted backdrop of rolling hills, a few feet from a bewildered Don Ameche. Her name was Mildred, and she had no idea how she'd gotten there. Don Ameche stopped mid-note, his suave expression crumbling into utter confusion. "My dear lady," he stammered, his baritone thrown off key, "I do believe you've wandered onto the set." "We're, rather in the middle of a takes." Mildred, clutching her popcorn box, just stared. "But, you're Don Ameche. And Miss Grable. And this is, Down Argentine Way." She looked down at her sensible shoes, then at the dirt road beneath her. Oh, my goodness. The colors, they were just so real. Betty Grable, ever the professional, shot a bewildered look at the invisible director, then tried to smile. "Well, bless your heart, dear. But we must be going. Perhaps you could find your way to craft services." But Mildred was already pointing. "Look, is that a real horse? Oh, it's magnificent." And before anyone could stop her, she darted off screen, disrupting a carefully choreographed gaucho riding sequence. The director, a man named Irving Cummings, threw his hands up. "Cut. For heaven's sake, who is that woman?" "Security." Except there was no security in this meticulously constructed cinematic world. Mildred was just there. And she was not alone. Over the next few weeks, the incidents escalated. It became a phenomenon, a strange, delightful, and utterly disruptive plague on Fox's brightest productions. In that night in Rio, the usually unflappable Don Ameche, again, a double role as the Baron Duarte and the performer Larry Martin, found his samba routine with Carmen Miranda abruptly joined by a trio of bewildered but enthusiastic fans from Akron, Ohio. They knew all the lyrics, but none of the steps, turning a perfectly synchronized number into a vibrant, chaotic free-for-all. Carmen Miranda, mid-shimmy, almost lost her towering fruit hat as a fan, ecstatic to be so close, reached out to steady it. "Darling," Carmen trilled, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and amusement, "you nearly gave my pineapple a fright." "I just wanted to help," exclaimed the fan, a young man named Stanley, beaming. "Your hat looked a little wobbly." Directors screamed into megaphones that mysteriously didn't exist in the fan's perception, actors missed cues, and plots spiraled into delightful nonsense. John Payne, attempting to serenade Betty Grable in Springtime in the Rockies, found his romantic ballad hijacked by a grandmotherly figure from Texas who insisted on harmonizing, loudly and off-key. "Oh, honey, you're singing it all wrong. It needs more oomph," she declared, much to Grable's suppressed giggles and Payne's visible exasperation. Dan Dailey, Fox's nimble-footed star, found his meticulous tap numbers in Mother War tights invaded by a phalanx of amateur dancers, all attempting to mimic his intricate footwork, often tripping over each other and occasionally over Dailey himself. "Excuse me, folks," Dailey puffed, trying to maintain his rhythm, "but this is a professional set, you know. My character isn't supposed to be leading a chorus line of, well, delightful as you are, strangers." Cesar Romero, usually the picture of suave villainy, found himself in Weekend in Havana facing not only the charming machinations of Carmen Miranda but also a concerned fan who kept trying to offer him relationship advice. "Mr. Romero," whispered a kindly woman during a tense scene, "you're too handsome to be so duplicitous. Why don't you just tell Miss Miranda your true feelings? She'd understand." Romero, for the first time in his celebrated career, was speechless, utterly unable to deliver his next line of menacing dialogue. Leonid Kinsky, often cast as the comedic relief, found his already absurd characters reaching new heights of pandemonium as fans decided to help him with his gags, usually by misunderstanding them entirely and making things even funnier, if completely off-script. Charlotte Greenwood, known for her booming laugh, high kicks and no-nonsense persona, found herself in a scene where a fan earnestly tried to explain the joke to her, as if she hadn't delivered it 100 times before. June Hever and Carole Landis, often playing charming ingenues or sophisticated foils, found themselves dealing with impromptu admirers who brought them real flowers from where and offered to help them carry their handbags. The studio was in an uproar. Directors threatened to walk out. Actors, usually paragons of professionalism, were on the verge of mutiny. "My character is supposed to be heartbroken," moaned Alice Faye, not trying to explain to a nice gentleman from Nebraska why I can't elope with him off-screen. The executives, sleek men in tailored suits, paced their lavish offices. "What in blazes is going on?" roared Daryl F. Zanuck, head of production. "Our movies are becoming interactive. We're losing control of the narrative. The audience is becoming the cast." Technical teams swarmed the projection booths, examined film reels, and tested the cameras. They found nothing amiss. The film stock was perfect. The projectors hummed along as usual. Yet, the phenomenon persisted, growing with each new screening. The fans, once pulled into the films, were happy, if a little bewildered. They danced with Carmen Miranda, gossiped with Betty Grable, and unwittingly altered pivotal plot points with earnest, if misguided, intentions. Sometimes, they even managed to return to their seats, blinking in the theater's dim light, carrying a faint scent of tropical flowers or a stray feather from a showgirl's costume. In the midst of this escalating chaos, there was one person who remained eerily calm, perhaps even a touch amused. Her name was Natalie Kalmus, and she was the undisputed high priestess of Technicolor. As the art director for Fox, she wielded immense power over the entire color process, from the initial dies to the final print. She was a formidable woman, sharp-witted and fiercely independent, with an almost mystical understanding of how color affected the human psyche. While others panicked, Natalie would stride through the Technicolor lab, her gaze piercing, her slight smile enigmatic. She spent hours poring over color charts, experimenting with new dye combinations, her hands often stained with the vibrant pigments she so meticulously controlled. When a frantic executive finally burst into her inner sanctum, demanding an explanation for the audience invasion, Natalie merely raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Ah, the audience," she purred, her voice a low, cultured murmur. "They finally feel a part of it, do they not? Isn't that what we always strive for, Mr. Zanuck?" "Immersion," Zanuck sputtered. "Immersion, yes. But not literal immersion. We're losing millions. Our actors are furious. Don Ameche is threatening to go back to radio." Natalie sighed, a theatrical gesture of mild annoyance. "Such a dramatic man. Tell me, Mr. Zanuck, have you ever considered the true power of color? Beyond mere aesthetics. Beyond making the costumes pop." Her eyes, the precise shade of deep sapphire, seemed to pierce through him. "Color is emotion. Color is vibration. And when it is pure, when it is amplified just so, it can resonate with the very soul." Zanuck stared blankly. "What on earth are you talking about, Natalie? Are you saying, you're responsible for this?" A faint smile played on Natalie's lips. "Responsible? Perhaps. I have merely enhanced the spectrum. Pushed the boundaries of what Technicolor can achieve. I believe that a perfect hue, a truly resonant chromatic chord, can create a sympathetic vibration with the imagination. A porous membrane, if you will, between the screen and the viewer." Her agenda had always been a quiet rebellion. She resented the studio's constant demands for bright and cheerful, without understanding the profound depth and potential of the medium she commanded. They wanted pretty pictures, she wanted a revolution. She wanted audiences to feel the vibrant worlds she helped create, not just observe them. She wanted to prove that Technicolor wasn't merely a gimmick, but a potent, almost magical force. The incident that truly pushed the studio to its breaking point occurred during a simultaneous premiere of Weekend in Havana and Springtime in the Rockies. The chaos was unprecedented. In Havana, Carmen Miranda's grand finale, a riot of feathers and sequins, turned into a full-fledged street party as dozens of fans materialized, dancing with the bewildered ensemble, some even trying on Carmen's signature turbans. In the Rockies, John Payne found himself in a snowdrift, not with the lovely Betty Grable, but with a family of 5 from Michigan who were convinced they'd found the perfect sledding hill. Don Ameche, pulling double duty and now utterly fed up, marched into Natalie's office, followed closely by a phalanx of equally exasperated stars: Alice Faye, Betty Grable, John Payne, Dan Dailey, and even the perpetually charming Cesar Romero, his smooth facade ruffled. "Natalie, this has gone far enough," Ameche declared, his voice booming with uncharacteristic anger. "My character in That Night in Rio just proposed marriage to a woman who isn't Alice Faye. My career is in tatters. And I had to explain the intricate art of the meringue to a bewildered gentleman from Idaho," exclaimed Carmen Miranda, fanning herself dramatically. "It is most exhausting, darling." Natalie regarded them with an almost maternal, yet deeply self-satisfied, gaze. "My dear, talented performers," she said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Are you not enjoying the spontaneity? The authenticity of these interactions?" "Authenticity?" shrieked Betty Grable. "My love scenes are being chaperoned by teenagers. I had a woman try to give me advice on my posture during a dance number." "We want our movies back, Natalie," said Alice Faye, her voice firm. "We want our scripts, our plots, our carefully constructed illusions." Natalie's smile broadened. "Ah, the illusion. But what if the illusion is so powerful, so convincing, it momentarily transcends itself?" She gestured around her office, which was filled with fascinating vials of iridescent liquids, spectrum analyzers, and arcane charts. "I have merely opened a door. A very, very colorful door. And now you need to close it," bellowed Don Ameche. Natalie paused, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Perhaps. But not without acknowledgement. Not without proving my point. She leaned forward conspiratorially. Fox wanted spectacle. They wanted Technicolor to dazzle. I have given them dazzling. I have given them worlds so real, the audience cannot resist stepping inside. She motioned them closer. It is simple, really. The precise calibration of light and pigment, focused through a specific lens array, creates a resonant frequency. The emotional connection of the audience, amplified by the vividness, creates the bridge. She picked up a small, crystal-like prism. To reverse it, one merely needs to introduce a slight harmonic dissonance. She held the prism to a beam of light, scattering it into a dull, muted rainbow. A subtle shift in the magenta-cyan balance, a slight desaturation in the reds, and the membrane becomes opaque once more. The actors looked at each other, bewildered and skeptical, but desperate. "So you can fix it?" asked John Payne, hope dawning in his eyes. "Of course," Natalie said, as if it had never been in doubt. "But let it be known that Technicolor is not merely a coat of paint. It is the very essence of dreams. And sometimes, dreams can be so potent, they spill out into reality." With a flick of her wrist, Natalie made a series of adjustments to a complex console in her lab. She instructed the projectionist across the country to implement a new filter, a microscopic adjustment to the Technicolor process. Slowly, subtly, the super-vivid colors began to dial back, returning to their familiar, albeit still spectacular, brightness. In theaters across the nation, fans who had been dancing in Havana or singing in the Rockies suddenly found themselves back in their seats, blinking in the dim light. They were disoriented, clutching souvenirs, a sequin from Carmen Miranda's dress, a tiny, painted flower from a backdrop, a faint aroma of tropical fruit. They were confused, but undeniably, exhilaratingly happy. They'd been there. The actors, mid-scene, watched as the unexpected interruptions simply vanished. Their co-stars were the ones in the script. The plots, though already irrevocably altered by fan intervention, began to follow their intended trajectories once more. There was a palpable sigh of relief on sets across the studio. Don Ameche finished his proposal to the correct leading lady, Dailey danced unencumbered, and Cesar Romero returned to his deliciously villainous ways. Life at Fox Studios returned to a semblance of normal. The movies were still vibrant, still cheerful, but the strange, porous quality of the screen was gone. Yet, a lingering sense of magic remained. The studio executives, while relieved, were also deeply unnerved by Natalie Kalmus. Her power, her understanding of color, was clearly beyond their comprehension. They were wary, but also, in a strange way, newly respectful of the profound artistry behind their Technicolor marvels. Natalie Kalmus, however, remained unfazed. She continued her work, her experiments now more covert, her smile a little more knowing. She had proven her point. Technicolor wasn't just about making things pretty, it was about making worlds so real, so compelling, that sometimes, just sometimes, they invited you right in. And in the annals of Hollywood, the whispered tales of the time the audience literally joined the cast became a legend, a whimsical reminder of the boundless, vibrant power of the silver screen.